Yeah, go ahead.
How many of you think that it is a common consensus for the paintings of Renaissance artists such as Raphael and Michelangelo to be considered the apex of artistic achievement? Well, most opinions on that matter are wrong, because despite their constant praise and admiration, there were groups of people who rejected their approach to art. One of the most well-known and vehement oppositions to the mechanically stylistic approach of Raphael was the 19th century group of British artists known as the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. The Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood was founded by 3 English artists, maintained a revolutionary and ideologically radical doctrine that set them apart from other 19th century artists, and endured great controversy due to their art and their philosophy. Now, the Brotherhood was originally composed of 3 members and was eventually expanded upon. The founding 3 consisted of John Everett Millais, who was an art prodigy by age 11 and entered the Royal Academy of Arts in the United Kingdom by age 11, which was an unprecedented age, where he studied art and actually painted one of the most controversial paintings of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, known as Christ in the House of His Parents, which shall be explained further later on. The second founding member was William Holman Hunt, who also attended the Royal Academy of Arts in Britain, where he met with the other founding members, and was considered a rebel to the Academy's founder, Sir Joshua Reynolds. And then finally, the third founding member, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, who was a premier medieval revivalist painter, which was an ideology heavily incorporated into the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, and he eventually became an early developer of the aesthetic movement, which was famous for its focus on the aesthetics of art rather than symbolism and meaning. Now, after these 3 founding members, there were 4 more members who eventually joined the Brotherhood and embraced the ideology of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. These included William Michael Rossetti, who was the brother of Dante Gabriel, Thomas Woolner, James Collinson, and Frederick George Stevens. All these other original members of the Pre-Raphaelites were greatly against this stylistic approach that the Royal Academy of Arts taught, that heavily emphasized the mechanical elegancy of Raphael. And they were essentially an anti-Mannerist, anti-Reynolds, anti-Raphael brotherhood. Now, the philosophy of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, they had a reaction against a mechanized academic art, meaning they rejected the standards that Raphael had developed, which was a focus on a heavily calculated and formulaic form, which was also heavily influenced by a classical flowing elegancy. They wanted to return to a pre-Raphaelite style, one that was earlier than Raphael, that focused on heavy, intense color, extensive detail, and more emotion, which was essentially medieval, but more medieval art, but in a modern setting. They rejected the standards of contemporary art and decided to study nature in their artwork rather than just the human form and use this calculated appeal. So rather than seeing the formulaic curves of an elegant Venus, you would rather see the rigid, emotionless body of Ophelia surrounded by vines and water, and with this heavy emphasis, with their heavier emphasis on nature and emotion. Now, there were also, with this radically new doctrine in the 19th century, there also came quite a bit of controversy. All founding members of this group attended the Royal Academy of the Arts, which was, as previously mentioned, founded by Sir Joshua Reynolds, a famous British artist, and he advocated a style that was originally developed by Raphael and artists from the Renaissance, such as Michelangelo, which was formulaic, which focused on teaching a very specific, calculated form of art that was strictly adhered to and did not allow much room for creativity, originality, or the imbuement of art with emotions. Now, these people, the Pre-Raphaelites, they published their own publication in which they were not very friendly to Sir Joshua Reynolds and actually called him Sir Sloshua, and were extremely critical of his artistic style and his artistic teachings. Now, one of the most famous controversial paintings was Millet's Christ in the House of His Parents, which I'll pass around now. This painting received great criticism because it depicted Christ in a working class family, which was a huge departure from the elegant and divine and over-the-top scenes of the Nativity, and rather showed them in a working class house where Joseph is sawing wood and Mary's on the ground with Jesus. And also what attracted great controversy from this painting was Millet's depiction of Mary, which many critics just loathed, but most notably Charles Dickens hated, and he actually considered the painting severely blasphemous, with Dickens calling Millet's Mary hideous in her ugliness and reminiscent of the vilest cabarets in France. Obviously, his work was not well received. Now all of you know about the little spoken group called the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood and their art, and you also now know that Renaissance and Mannerist art weren't universally accepted as the standard for all art, and rather had much opposition. The Brotherhood consisted of 7 revolutionary members, formed a radical yet simultaneously reactionary anti-Raphael artistic philosophy, and endured great controversy and condemnation for their ideas. But in the end, their influence has stood as highly influential, as well as one of the greater artistic revolutions of all time. Thank you.